It's DFS season here at Club Fantasy. We're going to be covering all of the NFL playoff games, breaking them down game by game from a DFS perspective. This video is going to talk about the Los Angeles Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Stay tuned. Oh, Captain, my Captain, this is Club Fantasy's DFS Showdown slate videos. We're going to be covering all of the NFL Divisional Round playoffs, as well as the conference championships and the Super Bowl. Today, we're going to be covering the Los Angeles Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I am your host, Joshua Hudson. You can find me at the One Hudsonian. He is our DFS expert at Austin_FFL, Mr. Austin Amandolia. Enjoying your break from your ski trip, buddy?
Yeah, honestly, it's very welcome to be sitting for a while.
There you go.
Very sore.
That the whoosh and the whoosh, the back and forth kind of gets to your legs and your whole body movements, right?
Yes, and the boots are probably the least comfortable thing you will ever wear.
I can imagine. All right. Well, before we get into it, Austin, remind everybody how they can play these DFS showdowns against us here at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, so we have a league on DraftKings. You can follow the link in the show description to join that league. We will have a contest for all 4 games this weekend, plus a Saturday main slate and a Sunday slate contest. 6 different contests for you to play against us. They are $2 entry fees, super cheap, and it's a fun way for you to come try and take our money, or just prove that you're better than us.
Trying and proving, very different. I'm going to lean on the trying because we won a bunch of them. Actually, all of them last week. So there's that. All right. One more time, you can show some love to our sister site, Women of Fantasy Football, and their great partnership with Trophy Smack. Head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. And help us show some love and support for women in sports. Get yourself a championship belt, ring, trophy, wall smack to decorate your office. All of it is customizable. Show off those championship achievements. And from now until January 31st, you can get yourself a free championship ring with the purchase of a belt or trophy. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF. WOFF. All right, let's get into our first category. It is Captain Chalk. These are the chalky captains that everyone is likely to pick because they know the name and they're just that damn good. Hard to argue against Saquon Barkley after rushing for a career-high 255 yards in his first encounter with the Los Angeles Rams this year. Austin, the biggest question, can he do it again?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not. And that's really what I want to talk about, because you took the talking point of why he's going to be chalky. It's because also I think it was his best fantasy performance of the season was against the Rams. And so people looking at try and copy and paste. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be playing my contrarian captains more often than not, because I think that it is unlikely that Barkley hits that ceiling again. Now, I'll probably still have him in a lot of my lineups, just not in the captain spot, because he still is a vital part of this offense. Especially, well, even if in small field stuff, I think it's still fine to put him in the captain spot because he's going to be that good and you'll be able to get different elsewhere. But if you're in a large field contest, I really think that picking a different captain is going to be the key to this contest.
To your point, yes, that was Saquon Barkley's best fantasy performance of the season. Whoo, boy! Wheels up. If y'all don't know, I'm an Eagles fan. So very excited for this matchup. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know that Saquon does the same damage this week. But again, I mean, he's going to be the chalky captain. He's going to be very heavily utilized. He is the focal point of this Eagles offense. I personally would probably look more towards putting him in my lineup versus the captain spot. Just throwing that out there from an Eagles perspective. But our next category, I think there's definitely some viable options. is going to be the Mutineer. These are your contrarian captain choices that offer some variety and upside in your large scale tournaments. Let's stay on the Eagles side because you bring up AJ Brown, and really the most infamous thing that he did in week, in the wild card round wasn't catching passes. It was sitting on the sideline reading a self-help book.
Yeah, what wild content from AJ Brown during the wild card round. But I want to go down.
It's still no doing push-ups and sit-ups in your driveway, but I'll take it.
Fair. I like him as a contrarian captain this week just because he is still the number one pass catcher. He's still a freaking beast. He's going to be really good. And I can see a scenario where the Rams defense really focuses on shutting down the run and trying to heat up Jalen Hurts. And in those scenarios, I think Hurts is going to look for his number one target, which is AJ Brown. We've seen him be the number one pass catcher very consistently throughout the season. And it's really just it's a game theory move, honestly, pivoting off of Saquon Barkley. I don't think Devontae Smith has quite the upside that A.J. Brown does. He hasn't shown it as much this year. So I'm going to stick with A.J. Brown instead.
Yeah, fun note on Jalen Hurts and really this passing game as a whole. This is the first time since Jalen's been a full-time starter that he hasn't finished a season with 3,000 passing yards. Now, I understand he, sat out or missed the last two games with a concussion. So he plays those games, he probably hits that mark, but just over 2,900 passing yards. Like that goes to show you how much they've leaned on Saquon this year. So even relying on AJ Brown, Devonta Smith may not be the smartest play, but it is kind of like you say, it's a contrarian play, right? It's the way to get different when you're looking at these larger field tournaments. On the flip side to that, the wide receiver one in Los Angeles is 1,000% the guy that you want to target, and that would be Puka Nacua.
Yes, and I almost made him the contrarian captain for this show, but it was kind of hard to do that when Saquon Barkley ran for 255 yards the last time that they played the Rams. So Puka Nacua ends up being a contrarian option just because he's probably going to be the most targeted player in this matchup between the two teams. Because of how much they're utilizing him on the Rams side of the ball. Now, I think this is going to be an interesting challenge for him because I do think the Eagles secondary they're tough. They're not somebody you can just mess with. And so they're going to have to be really creative and scheming touches for Nacua for this to really pay off. So that's also, again, why I actually lean a little bit more into AJ Brown here. But I think if you're betting on the Rams keeping this close, Puka Nacua is a really interesting option.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Nacua had 4 games this season with 13 or more targets. One of them came against Philly. He went for 9 catches and 117 yards in that matchup. Now, granted, a lot of that was, I don't want to call it garbage time, but it was definitely, them trying to keep the pace later in the games as Saquon was just running all over him. So, I think this is a very different Rams defense than what we saw in week 12. They have gotten a lot better over the last month of the season. But when you look at their schedule and the teams that have beat up on them, they've been elite offenses that know how to control games and take advantage of spots. And the games that they've been winning have been more so offenses that don't have near as much firepower. Their defense last week basically carbon copied what Aaron Glenn did to Sam Darnold. That's why they were able to bring so much pressure in Darnold's face. But I digress. All right. Next category, the first mate. Every captain needs a reliable crew. These are going to be the standouts that maximize your lineups. We've talked about the weapons on Philly. Let's talk about the guy who starts every single drive with the football in his hands, and that's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think whether or not you have Saquon Barkley in your lineup, playing Jalen Hurts is still a great option because, like you said, he touches the ball so much. And I think that they'll be running the ball more because that's what happens in the playoffs. Rushing quarterbacks tend to rush even more because this is the time to do it. This is the time to put it all out on the field so that they can bring home the win. Part of the reason I like this, though, is because I am really intrigued by betting on the Eagles pass game just in general. And so if I put AJ Brown in my captain spot, I definitely want to do the stack with Jalen Hurts and say that Saquon has a good game, but not a great game. And therefore ends up not being maybe he doesn't score a touchdown, right? And if he doesn't score a touchdown, he probably gets 15 fantasy points, which is fine. But for that price point, I'd rather play Jalen Hurts, who could get a 20, 30-point game by rushing a ton and also throwing touchdowns to both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
Makes sense. Speaking of Devonta Smith,
yes,
here's your segue.
I find him intriguing, even though I don't want him in a captain spot. And part of what I'm betting on here is that the Eagles have to pass the ball to win this game. You mentioned it, Josh. The Rams' run defense has actually been pretty tough down the stretch since week 15. They've been one of the hardest run defenses for opposing teams among the divisional round teams. And that's also just a thing in the playoffs in general. Oftentimes, teams that can defend the run are the teams that are good and can make the playoffs. And so it just makes it harder for Saquon Barkley, as elite and incredible as he is, to have a true ceiling outcome from a fantasy perspective that you need. He can still be effective for a football perspective, and he's going to, all of the play action is going to be incredibly effective because the Rams are going to want to focus on Saquon Barkley, but that just plays more into the pass game, potentially being the thing that pops and drives the offense in this game because the Rams are focused so much on stopping the run.
Yeah, and everybody talked about how last week was a down week and, Jalen knocking off the rust and all this stuff. And, now the questions are, is the pass game good enough to get him to the next level? We know what happens when they doubt the passing game. They say, hold this beer. And then they go out and they throw for 400 yards. That's what is so unique about this offense, is that they don't need the passing game week in and week out because the running game is so good. But the one week where they say, you know what, we don't need to run Saquon 30 times, they're going to throw the football 35 times, and they're going to break a defense because that's just what they're capable of doing. The next category is the deck scrubbers. These are going to be your cheaper punt plays that can make a lineup based on one play or limited opportunity. Austin, I got to say, I think you picked the wrong tight end. While he is definitely the cheapest, because Grant Calcaterra definitely doesn't have the stiff arm that Dallas Goedert has.
Yeah, no, he does not have the stiff arm that Dallas Goedert has, but he has the salary, which is really important for the deck scrubbers this week, with how incredible the players are on both sides of the ball, particularly on the Eagles side. If you try to squeeze A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Devonta Smith in your lineup, you're not going to have a lot of money left over. So I'm going with Grant Calcaterra because he still was involved in the offense, and that's all I need. I need a little bit of hope. I need 3 targets, the chance of him getting in the end zone, and for $1,000, $2,000 player, that's pretty good.
Hence the definition of the punt play.
Exactly.
All right, the next guy here is I'm guessing potentially an injury replacement, and that would be Davis Allen.
Yeah, so this is a situation where you definitely need to pay attention to the injury report. Tyler Higbee, I don't think has been officially ruled out yet. He wasn't when I was prepping for the show. He may have been since then, but as far as I know, he has not been officially ruled out. But there's a chance that he doesn't play. He didn't play the second half of the game last week, and so I'm looking then at Davis Allen and Colby Parkinson as the other 2 tight end options that are good punt plays. I like going with Davis Allen just because he's a little bit cheaper, but I think you can make a good case for either one, especially we saw how heavily the Rams were utilizing the tight ends last week. I think that could continue to translate because I think that is a way that they're able to kind of, in some ways, have an extension of their run game, but also play off of Puka Nacua a little bit because Cooper Kupp not really doing the things that we were hoping for. Tutu Atwell, he wasn't really an impactful player last week, and so those tight ends really start to play an important role.
Yeah, and what scares me with his Eagles defense is losing linebacker Nakobe Dean. I believe it was his patellar tendon in his knee, so he's done for the playoffs. So you're going to be working in Orrin Burks and rookie Jeremiah Trotter Jr. kind of into that rotation. Zach Bond typically plays more of that will linebacker, so you're going to get him more in coverage than you will Nakobe Dean, or Nakobe Dean's replacement anyway. But that's going to open up, I think, some more opportunities for tight ends if they end up trying to move Zach Bond more into that, Mike kind of linebacker role there. So I like that option, even if I'm not loving that option as a Eagles fan. Friendly reminder, you can play these DFS Showdown slates against us here at Club Fantasy. Hit the link in the description below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or in the podcast that you're listening to on your favorite podcast feed. Come try to take our money, have some fun. We've got leagues set up, and there's 6 different tournaments that we're going to have. So all fun and games, and it only costs $2 per lineup, so it doesn't break the bank. Our final category here is the Kraken, the lineup traps that sink the ship. I'm very much with you, Austin. Let's pour some water on Jahan Dotson after he scored his first touchdown as an Eagle in a playoff game.
Yeah, whenever that happened to start the game, I was like, of course Jahan Dotson would score a touchdown, because I'm pretty confident he was also the Kraken player when we had the Philly breakdown last week. I did get a little bit excited because I do have Jahan Dotson in a couple of playoff best ball leagues because of the game theory aspect of that. So I was like, maybe he can help me advance. Well, he then got one more target the rest of the game, and that's why he's a trap.
It's a trap. All right, the next guy here, Ronnie Rivers, the backup to Kieran Williams. You don't want to run on the Eagles, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, so it's a tough run defense already. And then you have Sean McVay, who is a maniac and just only ever runs with one running back and just runs them into the ground. Ronnie Rivers is not going to get any touches, or he'll get like 2 touches unless Kyron Williams gets hurt. And I don't bet on injuries when I am playing DFS, so don't play Ronnie Rivers.
Makes sense. All right, one more time, head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Get all of your achievement-based needs. Celebrate those fantasy football championships. Spend a little money playing with us on DFS. Save the rest of it. Get yourself a new belt. Friendly reminder, use promo code WOFF at checkout, WOFF, from now until January 31st. Get yourself a free championship ring with the purchase of a belt or trophy. He is Austin at Austin_FFL. I'm Josh at the One Hudsonian. You, of course, can follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL, clubfantasyffl.com. This has been our DFS breakdown of the Los Angeles Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We will be covering every single playoff game from a DFS perspective. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel or the podcast feed, because we've got every other game covered and you definitely want to listen. We'll see you guys for the next video.